Welcome into Double A Baseball on this Wednesday afternoon. The World Series is set. Adam Oppenheim alongside Alex Hines here on Double A Baseball. Of course, as we all predicted, the Arizona Diamondbacks and the Texas Rangers, Alex.
Absolutely. I had this since day one, obviously. The Diamondbacks, man. What a team. Snakes alive. Snakes thrive.
Is that where you want to start? Diamondbacks?
Yeah, it's the bigger story, so let's go with that because
Yeah, honestly, if we were to predict teams out of the NL to make a World Series run, I'd probably put the Diamondbacks second to last, probably behind the Brewers to start the postseason.
I would have put them only behind the Marlins.
Oh, Marlins. Okay, Marlins too.
I
Okay.
actually believed in the Brewers, funny enough. I thought the Brewers would do pretty well, but in the end they lost to the Diamondbacks, and the Diamondbacks taking their place. We talked about, I mentioned that article 3 weeks ago, when they made the LCS. It was last week. Maybe.
Last week, yeah.
Time is going by quickly. The fact that they were one of the most improbable teams to make the LCS historically. Not make the World Series, not win the World Series, just make an LCS. And the fact that they're now in the World Series as an 84-win team, a team that, is coming 2 years off of a 100-loss season, so are the Rangers, that, their Pythagorean win-loss is, I believe, a losing record, if I remember correctly, because they had a negative run differential.
They did have a negative run differential.
I mean, everything screams this team was not going to go very far. This team is lucky to be in the postseason. Well, that just shows you what the postseason's like. I mean, you never know what's going to happen.
And I don't remember exactly when we recorded last week. I think it was
Tuesday.
But it was before the championship series. Is that right?
It was right at the beginning of it. I think it was either after Game 1 or right before Game 1.
Yeah, and the Phillies, after going up 2-0 and winning 10-0, everyone counted the Diamondbacks out.
Yeah.
And you got to give a lot of credit to, their young guys and their pitching staff, their ability to really hit for power. Ketel Marte just been incredible this postseason.
I mean, Ketel Marte now has the longest streak in MLB history.
That's right.
Longest hit streak in MLB history
16.
to start a postseason career. And I believe now that is just straight up the longest hit streak in postseason.
Yeah.
I could be wrong about that.
That's what I thought it was.
But it's definitely 16 games. I mean, and he's hitting for extra base hits as well. I mean, looking at this series, where is he here? Ketel Marte, 4 doubles and a triple, including the big triple came last night. That's 5 extra base hits. I believe he's got 8 or 9 now overall. I think it's like 9 this postseason. I mean, that's absolutely ridiculous.
I mean, they don't call them the answer backs for nothing. Am I right? I mean, the team is it's so fun to watch. And the thing is, I think Corbin Carroll's going to be more of a household name now, but you're getting other contributors. Gabriel Moreno has had a really good postseason. Christian Walker hasn't been great, but has been good enough. You've gotten contributions from guys like Tommy Pham, Alek Thomas, Loris Gurriel. Pavin Smith has been decent. He has a few hits. Geraldo Perdomo. Come on now. He's looked good.
Yeah, well, he was a guy that he was one of those weird ones because at the beginning of the year he looked really good back in April and maybe the early part of May. I mean, but he's a kind of guy where that you're thinking that's just a nice little short spurt at the beginning of the season. He'll fizzle back to average, which is what he did. But then he comes back now and really shows off. I mean, he had a great series overall, 8 of 24, and hitting for 1 big home run in
stolen bases too. As well.
Yeah, he stole a couple bags as well. I mean, stole a single bag, but he had a lot of speed anyway on the base paths. And just defensively, they looked really good. I mean,
they did.
I mean, they didn't have too many of the sparkling plays. I mean, I can't really recall any specific one. However, when you saw a ball hit in the outfield, you knew it was going to be caught because of how much speed they have out there. It's either Corbin Carroll or Alec Thomas in center. And if Alec Thomas is in center, Corbin Carroll is usually in right. And when you got the big lefty power bats of Philly that, will probably pull the ball more often than not, to have those two guys be your primary, outfielders that will be chasing those balls, it's huge. I think it was game 6. There were a couple long balls towards the end of that game with Philly trying to knock at the door that were routine catches for Alec Thomas that looked like any other defender that's going to get down for at least one, maybe two bases.
And Alec Thomas was showing off the power, too. I think he only had 8 home runs during the regular season. He had 4 or 5 during the postseason, I think.
He's got 2 in the series, and I think he had one against the Dodgers, too. So, I mean, that's...
But I feel like he had one against the Brewers as well.
Let me check.
At least, from what I remember.
He has 4 in the season. 4 in the postseason. One in the first 2 series, and then 2 in this one.
Yeah, he's just been incredible, and that's what you got to do. You got to get contributions from all those different people, and that was the question mark for the Diamondbacks. And the thing is, Corbin Carroll in this series against the Phillies was not very good at the plate. But he delivered in Game 7 when they needed him. And the speed of the Diamondbacks, not just stolen bases, going first to third, people don't realize the difference those type of things make in a game. Going up and then just needing a sac fly. It changes your approach at the plate, where you just got to put a ball in the outfield and you score a run.
Especially in Game 7. I think that was...
Yes.
Obviously, in the end, they get the 2-run lead because of a long sac fly. Both teams really knew that this was going to be a tough game. You look at the way they played. I mean, teams were trying to lay down bunts, and they were really acknowledging that they needed to use their speed. Stolen bases, even then, there were some, a few stolen bags that were close. And when you've got 2 of the best catchers in terms of caught stealings, Realmuto, and then the emergence of Gabriel Moreno. Both teams really had to utilize their speed in the series, and even, against Realmuto, the Diamondbacks weren't daunted by it at all.
And it really came down to that big Game 4, I think, where the series kind of gave a lot of momentum to the D-backs, scoring 3 in the bottom of the 8th and winning 6-5. Knocked Craig Kimbrell out of the game, and that was like a turning point for when the D-backs could realize they could actually, hang with the Phillies as much as they hit those loud home runs. Guys this postseason, obviously Schwarber, Turner, Harper, Bohm, Stott, Realmuto, Castellanos, besides this series, and some of their other players who were not very good against the Diamondbacks, but they could hang with this team who hits for power. They can hit for their own power, but that also doesn't mean they need to just go out swinging for homers because that's not their game. I mean, how many guys do they have with 30 homers? Probably just Christian Walker.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. So, and how many do the Phillies have?
Several.
More than one? All right. Definitely.
Yeah. I mean, to go off of that, they didn't have to score many runs because their pitching got the job done. I mean, going into this series, I think I was more focused on the fact that they were going to be outstaffed pitching-wise going into it. I wasn't too worried about the D-back offense. I was more worried about their pitching staff. And they showed up, this whole postseason. Zach Gallen didn't have his greatest looks.
He hasn't been great this postseason, but
he really didn't. I mean, he got really kind of killed a little bit in Game 1, but
kinda.
Yeah, the other game, I mean, 3 solo homers in Game 5.
Yeah,
6.
no, I was just thinking about the combination.
But
he wasn't that bad.
Game 5, he wasn't great. He got the job done, but I mean, Merrill Kelly. I mean, what can you say? I mean, he pitched 5 immaculate innings against in Game 6, and then Brandon Pfaadt. I mean, pride of Bellarmine, right there.
Facts.
And he's not going to give you long innings, but he's giving you great short-term stints. And with their bullpen, they can allow that to happen. They don't have to worry about Brandon Pfaadt going 5 innings, or Merrill Kelly getting pulled after 90 pitches in the 5th inning. They can pull him there and say, this is our strategy because our bullpen is good enough to shut you down for the next 4.
And I think one of the most underrated moves during the season, Paul Sewald to the Diamondbacks. Everyone was looking at it for the Mariners side, saying it was, a bad move. And, I mean, who's to say right now where the Mariners would be? But we're just going to focus on the Diamondbacks side of things, that it worked out pretty well. That the Diamondbacks, have a reliable closer. they were able to fill in some of those other innings without using their starting pitchers. Keep in mind, the Phillies in Game 7 had to go to Zach Wheeler. But the Diamondbacks were able to stick with Brandon Pfaadt, who was very bad early in the regular season. Everyone looks at his stats like, why are you pitching a guy with a 5.5 ERA? People don't realize in the second half of the season, in the postseason, he's been a great pitcher. So if you can get 3 or 4 out of him, and then Ryan Thompson was coming in, Andrew Saalfrank was supposed to be better than he was this series. He was really struggling with walks. Stuff is fantastic. Another IU guy. And then Kevin Ginkel.
I mean,
who was disgusting in this series. Absolutely disgusting.
Kevin, we were talking about this on the walk over here. Kevin Ginkel has a ridiculous slider. I think it's a slider, maybe a curveball.
A sweeper?
It falls off the table. I mean, it drops like this instead of like, sideways from a slider that way or a curveball that way. It really just dies. And it's ridiculous watching how many ugly swings he got on it, especially last night in the 8th inning. I mean, he got 2 strikeouts on balls in the dirt that, you sit back and wonder, how are you, getting swings off that? And Ryan Thompson, you talked about Sewald. Ryan Thompson might be the other most underrated move of the regular season. Gets released by the Rays in August, gets picked up, comes out here, side-arming guy, nasty stuff, and he's getting swings and misses on that frisbee slider. I mean, it's not very often you get released by the Rays and go on to doing good things. Usually that's the other way around.
Right.
But hey, they found a way to use him, and they're kind of doing the D-backs what you kind of wish the Rays would have done during their attempts at postseason runs, which is be able to get their starting pitchers to do a little bit more in the postseason, and then be able to be smart but not overthink their bullpen management, because the way that Torey Lovullo's used this bullpen has been like analytically smart, if you really want to put analytics in front of it, not to use that kind of buzzword, but also knowledgeable on where his guys are and who they are, in certain situations.
Yeah, and then the last thing I'm going to focus on for this series, because we only got 30 minutes today, unfortunately, is the Phillies pitching staff, which Zach Wheeler was probably the best pitcher this entire postseason.
By far.
But Aaron Nola, who was really good the entire postseason, did not have a great start in Game 6. And then the bullpen was sort of inconsistent for Philadelphia. Like, who do they bring in, especially after, Kimbrel, one of their main guys, lost them a game. They had Michael Lorenzen, who they picked up from the Tigers, who was an all-star, right? Pretty incredible. Gregory Soto, Jose Alvarado, they obviously had him on the run last year.
And they had
it was
to use
big.
him early last night, too. He came in right
seventh
after
inning, right?
Suarez. I think it was
no.
He came in before Wheeler.
Oh,
Like,
yeah,
they were
he
putting
did.
their cards on the table with a guy like Alvarado, who has looked really good overall.
No, he came in after Hoffman. He was the 6th. Yeah. And then Matt Strahm. They just kind of have a collection of guys, and they weren't really sure to go to, where the Diamondbacks were able to get some at least quality starts enough where they could manage the bullpen in an effective way. And they went to their main guys. Obviously, we're about to talk about the Rangers, but it's a good thing to have great starters and then just a similar bullpen rotation. And if you pitch the same guys and it works, I mean, it works. It's not for 162 games. It's a postseason run.
Right. It's just all about trusting your guys, and so. I think I agree with that. I think the Phillies pitching still was fine. I mean, it wasn't great, but it wasn't terrible. They just got outpitched. They got outplayed, and that's really a credit to the Diamondbacks.
And going on the road to win 2 games.
Speaking of going on the road to win games, the Rangers won all 4 of their games on the road. Another
Wild.
crazy Game 7. First time since 2019 that happened. All teams winning road games across a 7-game series. Do we want to just start with the Adolis Garcia in the room?
That's actually what I was going to say. What do we want to start with? Adolis Garcia or Adolis Garcia? Yeah, that's right.
Exactly. 5 home runs in a postseason series. Kyle Schwarber, had done that as well, actually. But Adolis Garcia, electric. 15 RBI. I believe he's up to 20 in the postseason. He's at 15 in this series. That's 1 RBI behind, I believe, David Freese for the most in a postseason entirety. And he's got at least 4 games to
He had the most in a series ever. So, I mean, Adolis Garcia, after, Brian Abreu, hit him with the pitch, the whole 2-game suspension thing, going to be pushed back to start next regular season, whatever. Don't want to focus on that. But Adolis Garcia obviously took that extremely personally because he was impossible to get out. I mean, it was unbelievable. He had that 0 for 4 game in Game 6, and then what? He hit the grand slam. And then in Game 7, the opposite field home run. Actually, his first at-bat, he was standing at the plate like he thought it was a home run. It ended up being a single. Everyone was roasting him on Twitter. So he says, I'm just going to do the same thing. Stand there, but this time, hit it further into the opposite field. And then he finishes it off with another home run to left field. I mean, it was unbelievable to watch. His swag, it's like way up here.
Yeah.
Way up here. Rest of the MLB way down here right now. Adolis Garcia is like, he's there. My goodness, he's fun to watch.
It was just poetry in motion the way that Game 7 went for him. I mean, you mentioned it, just admiring a single. And then the opposite field, though, like the way he went the other way with a hard fastball, I mean, wow. It's not just I can hit the ball 450 feet to the pole side. I can, slam it the other way if I need to. And he, really just looked so good this whole series. Him crushing baseballs just is fun to watch. I mean, he's just a fun guy. I mean, you look at the stories about him, and he can come off as a guy who's very showboaty, but like when you hear from his like teammates about him, in the stories, he's just a very chill, relaxed guy, and I mean, he just goes out there and has fun. It's crazy to watch him. I mean, there's not much else you can say. Can you believe that nobody picked him up when he was DFA'd by the Rangers?
I know, yeah.
Hey,
Cardinals, yeah.
You know.
Add it to the list, for sure. But I'm also going to mention Corey Seager. Of course, fantastic. And the thing about Corey Seager is, being a guy who was second in the MVP race to obviously Ohtani the entire year, he was so inconsistent in the playoffs between all those flyouts and then just hammering baseballs. And he's able to find it really at the right time with the homer to get them on the board in the upper deck. When Marcus Semien was sort of struggling at that leadoff spot. And then Evan Carter, the unsung hero, really from day one of the postseason, he's been so consistent. He's made a couple great catches at Mickey made. So, it's big. And then you're getting other contributions from Jonah Heim, Nathaniel Lowe, who are guys that can struggle but can also hit home runs at any time. And that's what the Rangers had. They the power hitters, and for the Astros, it was a lot of Yordan Alvarez and the top of the order with Altuve and Bregman and Abreu, and not much else because Abreu had some homers in this postseason. I think a couple or a few, but Kyle Tucker was not great. Chas McCormick, I don't remember him hitting a homer either. Jeremy Pena was not very good, and Maldonado is Maldonado.
Yeah, elite bat, all right,
Yeah, and then and Christian Javier.
That was
Game 7
to go.
because he was not great in the regular season, but he just turned it on in the playoffs.
But
until then,
the thing is, like, they had to rely on their pitching staff a lot. They had to get a lot to go right with this team. I mean, you had Framber Valdez, who wasn't pitching the way he did last year. You had Christian Javier not looking great. You really just didn't have that starting rotation that was solidified. Even Verlander had one poor start after having one good start. And from there, they weren't able to put themselves in a good situation because when Javier left the game in the first inning, it was 3 runs. It was not going to be a good game for them. You kind of felt it. But the fact that they had to go to a lot of guys that they weren't trustworthy
J.P. France
early in the game, they couldn't get it to their lockdown guys like Neris and Presley down the stretch because they lost this game in the first 3 innings. They only used Phil Maton, who was great this postseason for I think to finish out the first inning, and then I think they took him out for Hunter Brown.
Yes,
They just didn't. They lost all command of this game with their pitching staff, which is not something you're used to with the Astros. Last year, you look at their postseason run, they had guys throughout. I mean, you throw a combined no-hitter with so many guys that can just come out there and give you quality innings. It just wasn't the case this year. And in the end, that spelled the end for them. It spelled the end for Dusty Baker, who is going to be retiring presumably or stepping down, at least is what it sounds like he's going to be doing in the offseason. So it just, this was not the Astros team you're used to seeing, but also credit to the Rangers. I mean, they played above what anybody would have expected.
Yeah, and I'm going to focus on the flip side of the Rangers pitching staff, which starting Max Scherzer in Game 7, I honestly disagreed with the call to start him. And I especially thought after he completed the second inning, they definitely should have taken him out. He ended up giving up those couple runs, one run after that, because I think he gave up one the first. Yes, he did. That was a solo home run from Bregman, I believe. But Jordan Montgomery was great in relief again. Nathan Eovaldi. Then they went just a similar formula to how they've done the entire postseason. Josh Sborz gave up, I think, his first hit of the postseason. I think that's right. That's wild statistic. I'm pretty sure. Aroldis Chapman, who's pitched a little bit. Then Jose Leclerc, who is just unbelievable. Bounce back performance. After, honestly, the Rangers as a team, that Game 5 was absolutely devastating. To happen in your home stadium after that Garcia home run, to have Altuve hit that in the ninth, and to bounce back was just unbelievable mental toughness.
Yeah, and I mean, you talk about that, losing at home in Game 5, losing all three at home for the Rangers, but losing at Elm in Game 5, the game that you feel you have to win, because whoever wins that game has the momentum, because the next team has to win too, obviously. That comeback to go on the road to Houston. Houston is a huge playoff atmosphere. I mean, both them and the Diamondbacks had to go against huge hostile atmospheres on the road to win this series and win 2 road games. They both looked so good on the road, just calm. And when you consider that, obviously the Rangers have some experienced guys, they were able to look like they were meant to be there, or, looked like they'd been there, the past 3 years. So I think they just looked great on all aspects, and it leads to an interesting World Series.
It does. That was just incredible Game 7 Rangers-Astros. That's something, I just couldn't see happening. I also want to focus on early in that game that the Rangers were able to get out of some jams and then sort of pull away. And that happened with the Diamondbacks as well. You're like, the Phillies could have added on more runs, and it ends up being, the 2 underdogs by probably a good bit, I'm guessing, on betting odds and stuff like that, and what people, the general public thought. But yeah, moving on to the World Series, Alex, you got anything else to add?
Not for that. I think looking at the World Series, this can be interesting. I mean, I like the pitching staff through both of these teams. I think stand out first, because you look at what the Rangers were able to get out of Eovaldi and Montgomery. Montgomery, by the way, did not pitch very deep in relief because of how much they were able to give him control-wise, and neither Gallen nor Kelly pitched in Game 7 for the D-backs. This will be rested teams. I think Montgomery probably would have to go Game 2, but you got Eovaldi Game 1. Like, you look, these guys have 2 really great starters on each side, and then you got the Brandon Pfaadt effect for the D-backs and Max Scherzer's experience and ability to at least give you quality 4 or 5 innings to work a bullpen game, but you have good bullpens on both sides as well. You don't have to worry about how deep your starter goes.
The bullpen should be really interesting, especially when we talked about the Rangers. Everyone talked about how bad their bullpen was. Yeah. And, the truth is the numbers said they were, a bottom 5 bullpen. They were terrible. But they've gone to their reliable guys. Josh Sborz has been great in the postseason. That's the one bullpen guy that really stands out for the Rangers. And for the Diamondbacks, Kevin Ginkel has been great. And then Paul Sewolds has really continued a pretty good season for him, coming over from Seattle. It's just 2 electrifying teams who have a lot to prove still. The young D-backs, guy like Corey Seager from the Rangers, Adolis Garcia, didn't know if he'd be playing professional baseball, and that was on the highest level, playing at the highest level in the MLB. And then I mean, Rangers have some young guns too. Jonah Heim, Evan Carter. It's a fun matchup. I know the ratings are not going to be great. I'm here to tell you right now, we don't care.
I mean, yeah, I think it's going to be fun. And, the offenses look great. You mentioned the youth of the Diamondbacks. Even the youth, when you consider, Adolis Garcia is only a few years into his major league career, and he's doing things. You got Evan Carter, a young guy as well. So I think, this is a lot more even of a series if you just threw up these two teams in, say, August and said, hey, we're going to have a 7-game series between the Rangers and the Diamondbacks. Who do you think's going to win it out of a 7-game series? People wouldn't have felt great about the Rangers for the way they were struggling down the stretch. But also, you look at the Diamondbacks' 84-win record, you're thinking they're going to compete with the Rangers? But, I mean, you look, this is arguably not as hard of a task as trying to defeat that Philly team. I mean...
Yeah, but it's so tough to compare because, the Braves were supposed to be, the runaway team in the NL, and it just didn't happen, but... it's so hard to predict. This year just shows it all. Yeah. Happens every year, but this year just is like, what is going on?
Exactly.
Though every team wins on the road in the ALCS, what are we doing?
Yeah. So Adam, let's finish it out here. What's the prediction for the World Series MVP? Who you got?
I'm gonna go Rangers in 7. MVP. Corey Seager.
That's fair.
What were you going to go with?
Let's go with the Rangers in 6. And let's go... I'm going to be different. I also like Corey Seager.
I probably would have gone D-backs if you said Rangers.
Let's go... You know what? Let's say MVP. It's always somewhat obscure. Let's go Jonah Heim. I think he could have a pretty nice series.
Yeah, I guess mine was a little basic, but
But also, it's a pretty good pick. Corey Seager in the playoffs tends to be something else.
It should be a whole lot of fun. I mean, I am absolutely thrilled for these two teams, two fan bases. 2011 for the Rangers, that stings a little bit. Diamondbacks, last 10 years. Last 20 years, my bad. Two teams who, like you mentioned, had 100 losses. Absolutely incredible.
A chance for the D-backs to have the second lowest record by a World Series champion, had only better than the 2006 Cardinals, 84 wins.
Well, I think with that, it's time to watch the World Series, which starts on Friday. And I think that's going to wrap it up for AA Baseball. Pretty exciting episode talking about the championship series, and we previewed and predicted the World Series. So for my partner, Alex Hines, I'm Adam Oppenheim. We'll see you next week on AA Baseball.